Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're finally going to be doing my long-awaited, I guess, quarter 1 wrap up, even though technically we're nearing the halfway point of the year. I'm really bad at doing monthly wrap ups. I just feel like it's something I've never really filmed before, and I feel like I talk about my reads in my vlogs, so you've already seen my thoughts and you already know what I've rated these books and, you know, my feelings about them. So it feels kind of redundant for me to do like a monthly wrap up every single month, especially on months when I read only like 2 or 3 books. It feels like I'm not going to have so much to say. But now that we are entering the summer months, I thought it would be fun to kind of take you through the books I've read so far this year, my brief thoughts on them, my rating, and if I recommend them or not. This isn't going to be like super detailed reviews of every single book. You should definitely go watch the vlogs that I've read them in. I think I've vlogged pretty consistently over the first little bit of this year, so you should be able to see my in-depth thoughts about these books in those videos. But I just thought it would be fun to take you through these. I've read a total of 22 books so far this year at the point of filming this, and I'm just excited to talk about them. So let's just get right on into it. So we are going to be going chronologically, of course. I feel like that's the only way to do this. So the first book that I read was in January, and we started off with Song of the Forever Rains by E.J. Mello. This is an indie published book. I had followed the author on Instagram for quite a while, and I'd seen her series, and it always interested me, mainly because of the cover. I just think it's so beautiful. But this series is a trilogy. It follows 3 sisters, and each sister gets her own book. So this is the first book. It follows the main character named Larkyra Bassett, and she is part of this group called the Musai, who all have these magical gifts, I would say. Basically, for a brief synopsis of this, Larkyra has a magical gift with her voice, and it's very dangerous, but she's giving her first solo mission where she travels to this place called Lachlan, where she learns that the Duke is smuggling a poisonous drug, and, you know, his kingdom is in like forever rain. Like it rains nonstop there. That's why it's called Song of the Forever Rains. But the Duke has his nephew, I believe, who has had a lot of issues, and Larkyra finds herself being drawn to him. And so she's basically sent to stop this Duke from drug trafficking. But she meets his nephew along the way, and they grow closer, and they find out a lot of mysteries about it. I wouldn't say this is my favorite fantasy of all time, but I did really enjoy it. I think the writing was really nice, and I felt very connected to our characters. I do think the world building was a bit lacking, like it didn't ruin my enjoyment of it or anything. I just feel like I need to keep reading the books to really get to know the world and know like the structures and the characters a lot more. But overall it was a really fun time, and I feel like this book and this series is definitely really underrated, so I do recommend you giving it a shot if you're just looking for something that you haven't heard many people talk about. I highly recommend, and I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was also in January, and it is by one of my favorite authors. So I read Lips Touched 3 Times by Laini Taylor. This is like one of her very first novels, and it's actually illustrated by her husband, which is really cool. There's illustrations throughout, and I'll give you a quick glimpse of those too. But this has 3 separate short stories, and I will just say they should all be novels. I wish Laini Taylor would write all of these into full-length books or series, because I would absolutely love all of them. I think they were so cool and just so atmospheric. Something about her writing just makes everything feel so vivid and so realistic, and it just reminded me of why I love her so much as an author. So the 3 stories we have are Goblin Fruit, Spicy Little Curses Such as These, and Hatchling. And I think out of all of them, my favorite was Hatchling. I just think the idea was the most gruesome and the most unique. It was just so interesting to me. I really liked Goblin Fruit and Spicy Little Curses Such as These, but I think Hatchling was the first one. Like, I literally could not pull myself away from that story. So yeah, here's some of the illustrations in here. They're just really cool. Each story has a new illustration, and it kind of like goes through the plot of the story through images, and then you read the story and then you can look back on the pictures, and it was such a good time. I feel like it is kind of hard to get your hands on a copy of this though, so if you are able to get one, I highly recommend this book. I feel like it is very underrated as well, and if you are a fan of Laini Taylor's work, or even Holly Black, I think if you like the Cruel Prince series, you will love this. A lot of the stories felt very reminiscent of that. So I also recommend this book, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just like really close to being a 5-star. Again, I just wish all of these were novels instead of short stories. My reading in January and February was very good because I read mostly physical books, which is something I have been trying to improve on. I feel like last year the majority of my reading was audiobooks, which is totally okay. Like, I read a lot of great books last year, but it definitely made my physical TBR look a bit worse. So I'm trying to take that down. That's been a big priority for me. So the next book I read was also in January, and it was Fallen Stars by Amani Ariu. This is the sequel to Heavenly Bodies, which I read last year and I absolutely loved. This book was such a blast. I had so much fun, and I've seen a lot of people be like kind of disappointed with it, and I can see where that comes from, but overall these characters just went through a whirlwind of events in this story. It was a lot of fun. We meet new characters such as Adrian, who's a pirate, and we get to follow Alara and Enzo as they continue their story. And oh my gosh, just so much happened in this. I feel so deeply connected to these characters. I feel like I know them so well and they're like my friends. But I annotated this book and matched the tabs, so this is definitely like a prized accomplishment on my shelf. And I did give this 5 out of 5 stars. It was just so much fun. Like, I wouldn't say it's the perfect book. I would have made some different choices, especially with kind of like the plot twist. The ending was a little bit like shocking to me in a bad way, but like I wouldn't change anything. Like, I think it's fine. It's just so much fun. And it's just an entertaining series with lovable characters that I can pick up. So I really, really love this sequel. I'm so excited for the third book, which has been pushed back to 2027. So I'm a bit disappointed, but I know it's gonna blow me away. I'm so pumped for book 3. So yeah, this is my first 5-star read from 2026, which is amazing. So after Fallen Stars, I did have to read for some homework. So I read a poetry book called Fierce Elegy by Peter Gizzi. I don't have the physical copy anymore, but I had to read this for my poetry class. I honestly don't have too many thoughts about it. I'm not really that into poetry. I just had to take a poetry class to get my final English major credit. So I do not have many thoughts. I didn't really rate that book, but I did count it towards my Goodreads goal because it is a book. So that's that. And then from January going into February, I did want to read a little bit of romance to break up the fantasy that I was reading. So I read First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, and I loved this book. Like, it's really rare for me to rate a romance book 5 stars, but I did. I loved it so much. I felt like our characters were human. Like, they were so realistic, and their struggles and their problems came from insecurities and came from how they grew up and what their situation was like and how they deal with these problems. It felt very realistic and like explained, like not just a plot device. It felt like a part of their character and a part of who they were. And so I feel like the couple, Aiden and Lucy, worked really well together. And I also just really think the premise of like a radio show and like kind of like publicizing it to the world was really, really cute. It was just so interesting and just a lot of fun. So I am trying to get a bit more into romance books and try and take myself out of them a bit more, because I feel like normally I read them a bit too critically. So I think what helped is taking that part of my brain out of the equation, so I was able to just like fully immerse myself in it and enjoy it. And I just thought it was so adorable and a lot of fun. So this was my second 5 out of 5 star read of 2026, which is surprising but really exciting. So I'm excited to read book 2, and I feel like this book is pretty popular, but if you haven't read it, I do really recommend it. And then after First Time Caller, I have an exciting read that I picked up for the majority of February, which was a long time coming for me, but it was Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. I was so nervous to do the tandem read for so long, so I just didn't do it. I just read this by itself, and it blew me away. I could not put this book down. I was thinking about it every time I wasn't reading it, and I just wanted to be in this world with these characters every second of every day. It was amazing. I loved it so much. It got me through so many winter storms and so many just like cold, frigid days where I could just come back home and be with these characters I love so much. And I honestly just want to reread this book already. Like, ugh, it was so vivid and so many crazy things happened in this book. It was like, people aren't lying when they say this is an amazing book. So of course I gave this 5 stars. I loved it so much, and I don't know if it's my favorite book in the series. Like, I feel like it's hard to top a lot of the other books in this series, but it's really, really close to the top. I loved it. So next we have our first audiobook of 2026. I feel like I was in a phase of burnout with audiobooks because I read so many, or I guess listened to so many audiobooks last year, and I definitely carried my reading last year. I think I read close to 80 books in 2025. So audiobooks definitely got me through it, but I think I would just burn out from them, so I needed a little break. But the first one I picked up was The Weaver Bride by Lydia Gregovich. This was my Fable book club pick for February. And this is a YA fantasy. It follows the main character named Lovett, and she basically participates in this marriage competition to avoid being sent to a prison for girls who don't get married and don't give their magic to their husbands. It's definitely not, like, that's not the plot. That's a very bad explanation of the plot. She essentially just participates in this magical marriage competition for the hand of this important person's son, and there's a lot of secrecy, a lot of lies, a lot of competition. I feel like that book is unlike anything I've read before. I will say if you do like Bridgerton, I think you would like it. It's not entirely like Regency inspired. It's definitely its own thing. There's these things called silk witches who have magic embedded in their hair, and then the men of this world are weavers, and they can imbue the silk witch's hair into objects and create like woven objects. So these girls have to get married to a weaver to have their magic be used, and if they don't get married, they are sent to the cloisters, which is a prison for them, which is really messed up. Overall, this was a lot of fun. I did really enjoy it, but I just think YA isn't really like the top priority of genres for me anymore. I do like it from time to time, but it's not something I actively seek out. This one was just really interesting, so I decided to listen to it. So I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. I do recommend it. It's a solid read, and the sequel is coming out soon, which I am curious about reading. Potentially, I might pick that up. I'm not really sure, but I thought it was a really good book, and I do recommend it. And then continuing into February, I was on a roll with 5 stars. In January and February, I will just say I was killing it with my reading. I was just making some really good choices. But next I picked up Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I found this copy at Half Price Books, and I decided to pick it up because I've loved her other books and I wanted to read this one. And I feel like a lot of people also know what this is about. This is the tennis book, but I feel like this book was extra special to me because tennis has kind of been in my family. My grandparents used to own and like run a tennis business, like a tennis shop. They would sell rackets and shoes and clothes and everything, and I'd always dreamed to like work there. Unfortunately, they closed it down, so I never got the chance, but I feel like it's been a big part of my family. My grandparents have always played tennis and I grew up playing it. I don't anymore. I wish I kept going, but I still do it as a hobby. So I feel like this book was a little bit more special to me. And I just really loved Carrie Soto. Like, I know that might be an unpopular opinion. I feel like a lot of people, they grow with her. They grow to love her as she comes into herself and her character. She's a tough person, not just in general, but to read about. I feel like she can be very unlikable, and I can see why people don't like her, but I liked her because of those reasons. I thought she was very well written, and especially the relationship with her dad. I think that was really well done, and Taylor Jenkins Reid always just has this way of fully immersing you into these worlds, even if it is just like the real world. Like, it always feels so realistic and so grounded in reality that it feels so real, but it's like not. I don't know how to explain it, but I just love her writing so much. So I do strongly recommend this. I think this would be a great book for the summer, sitting by the pool. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you pick it up, and I did give this 5 stars. After that, I did read another poetry book for my poetry class. It was called, I think it's called Reveille or Reveille. I'm not really sure, but it's by an author named Liza Huddock. We read this for my class. I don't really have thoughts on it. I already sold the copy, so that's not like a diss to the author or anything. I'm just not into poetry. I got it for a class, okay? So that's that. And then next up we have Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. Again, I didn't do the tandem read, so I was a bit more intimidated by this book than by Empire of Storms, because after I read Empire of Storms, I was on a roll. We had all our rotating characters, full cast. It was just so action-packed. I loved everything in that book, but I was kind of nervous going into this one because I feel like people do the tandem read because this book is slower, and I think this book is a bit boring, so they have to read it in tandem with Empire of Storms to get through it. I will say I do disagree with that. I think this book stands perfectly on its own. I just think people just don't like Kale for some reason. I love him. He can piss people off. He is annoying sometimes. Actually, he's annoying most of the time, but his character is so good. Just like throughout the series, he has grown so much, and so I feel like this book deserves to be read on its own. Of course, everyone can do what they want to. I just strongly recommend reading them separately because Sarah J Maas wrote this book on its own for a reason. Anyways, so this book was a bit slow. I won't lie, the pacing was a bit off at the beginning. I struggled to kind of relate to, I think her name is Irene. I think that's how you pronounce it. I struggled to relate to Irene's character at first, and struggled to get back into the head of Kale because he's kind of tough. But once we got into a bit more of the action and maybe like the midpoint of the book, it picked up and I couldn't put it down. Something about them coming together and finally learning to understand each other, it just really resonated with me, and I really just wanted to see where their story went. So is it the perfect book? No. Is it my favorite of the series? Also no, but this was still a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. I wouldn't change a thing about it, and I definitely think it's underrated. Like, I don't know why people are giving this book 3 stars, but that's just my opinion. And then I did decide to pick up another audiobook. My audiobook reading was definitely slow. It's picking up now, but that's okay. I do also have a physical copy of this one, but this is Bewilderment by Richard Powers. This author is like super famous, like has so many awards. This book won the Pulitzer Prize, but I got this because the author actually came to my university for a talk one time. So he signed a book plate for me, and of course I wanted to get one of his books to put it in, but I wasn't sure which one to get until I found this one at Half Price Books on clearance, and I was like, oh, it's fate. So I picked it up, and I didn't really know what it was about, but I've always like meant to read it. You know, obviously he signed that for me. I met him. It was very, very cool, a very interesting experience. But I decided to listen to the audiobook just because I felt like it was a genre I don't normally read. I don't normally read like literary fiction, you know, stuff like that. But the audiobook was very, very good. I highly recommend the narrator of that. He did a great job. But basically, this follows an astrobiologist named Theo Byrne who is searching for life throughout the cosmos while single-handedly raising his unusual 9-year-old Robin following the death of his wife. Robin is a warm, kind boy who spends hours painting elaborate pictures of endangered animals. He's also about to be expelled from 3rd grade for smashing his friend in the face. As his son grows more troubled, Theo hopes to keep him off psychoactive drugs. He learns of an experimental neurofeedback treatment to bolster Robin's emotional control, one that involves training the boy on the recorded patterns of his mother's brain. This one is more so told in like vignettes. It is like a linear story, but it's told of like glimpses throughout their lives, and I just think the writing in this was really, really impressive to me. How this author wrote Robin, who is, I guess I would categorize him as like a more neurodivergent child. It was really, really interesting, and it felt, I guess, realistic. I'm not really sure, but I just feel like the father-son relationship and the talk about grief and family, and there's a lot of talk about climate and like the environment as well. So I feel like it blended all these themes and these elements together pretty seamlessly. So it is a short read. I do really recommend it. It's nothing like I've read before. Like I can't really compare this to any book. At the end of the day, I did struggle to connect with it a bit. I don't know, that's just me. Maybe it's just outside of my genre, but I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. But I do really, really recommend it. If you like more maybe science fiction, maybe like general fiction type of books, I think you would like this. Next up is another Taylor Jenkins read. I do not have the physical copy of this, sadly. I hope to get my hands on one soon, but I read Atmosphere and I loved it. This was another 5-star read for me. I did not think I would love this book as much as I did. I thought, oh, a NASA book, a space book, I'm gonna get bored by the science descriptions and everything, but it was nothing like that. I was so captivated by this book. I loved reading about Joan and Vanessa and their relationship and the complications that that brought forward, and I loved also how it was told through different moments in time, and we kind of get to flick back and forth from the present stressful situation to the past and almost like the good old days of them coming together and meeting and falling in love. And I just thought it was so beautifully written, as always. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's characters and her writing and everything about her books. So of course I also recommend that one. This next book is a 2026 release. I was kindly sent an eGalley or a NetGalley copy from the publisher, which was very nice of them, but I decided to pick up a physical copy on my birthday, which you should definitely go check out that video. That is The Trident and the Pearl by Sarah K.L. Wilson. I was so excited for this book. Obviously the cover is beautiful, but the premise is also really, really interesting. It says, forced by the gods to be wed, forced by their secrets to be enemies. Basically, the main character of this, named Queen Coryllis, she rules these Crocus Isles, and they are currently flooding. There's so many storms. Her people are dying and in danger. Her husband goes out to sea to try to save everyone, and he dies at sea, which is very tragic. So she goes up to the temple and makes a bargain with these gods. Save her people, save her kingdom. She will do anything. She will sacrifice anything. They say, okay, you have to marry the first man who steps onto your docks. So, little does she know, she goes down and a little fisherman guy steps onto the docks and they now have to get married. Turns out he's actually the god of the sea. I think the writing in this book is some of the most beautiful I have read in a really long time. I definitely want to read more from this author, and I'm excited to see when book 2 comes out to get more of these characters' story and just see more of her skill. I think she's very talented, and I think the world in this is very, very intricate. There's so many places on the map in here that we did not even mention. Like, we did not even touch. So I really hope that we expand upon this in book 2. I think my biggest issue with this book, I don't know, I think I have a couple issues with this book despite actually really enjoying it. I really had trouble connecting to the characters. I think it's because there were so many secrets between Corlys and the god of the sea named Oak. There was just so much going on between them that they were hiding from each other, so it made it difficult to like connect with them and get in their heads because they were hiding so much from each other. It felt like they were also hiding stuff from me, the reader. I also think the pacing with this was a little bit off. It felt really, really slow. I don't think that's a fault of the writer's skill though. I think the writing was beautiful as a whole. It really made this book for me. I just think I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for stuff to happen, and the pacing just felt a bit off. And that kind of ties into the plot. I wish there was more action in here. It felt like it dragged at some times, but still overall I was just very immersed in this, and I'm excited to see what happens in book 2. I feel like there's a lot that we learned at the end that has yet to be expanded upon. But overall I also gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then next up, I did take a little bit of a break from physical books because the next physical book I was reading was humongous. So I next read the first volume of Attack on Titan, which I had already read before, but I had like kind of planned in my head to like binge read the manga. I don't know why, but then I only read volume 1. So I don't know why. So yeah, I don't know why I did that. I only ended up reading volume 1, but it was a great time. I love the story, I love the characters, love the world. 5 stars. And then next we have our first little doozy of 2026. Thankfully, that is the first time. And so I was very proud of myself for going so far 3 or 4 months into the year without like a low star rating. Like most of the books I've read have been higher than 3 stars, which is really, really good. I'm very proud of myself for that. But I've decided to listen to Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider on audiobook because I needed an audiobook. I was driving a lot, I was doing a lot where I was listening to stuff, and I just wanted something to pass the time that wasn't music. I'd kind of gotten burnt out from music, so I decided to pick up a popular romantasy because why not? And at first it started out great. I really liked the world building. I was kind of connected to our characters. I thought we had a lot of potential with this story. And then as it went on, I just kept getting so annoyed with the female main character because the male main character would lie and hide things from her, and then she'd just give in when he started to make out with her. And I'm like, can we have some common sense here? It just really bothered me. And I also kind of had issues with the plot and the world building. It just felt very generic. It just didn't really wow me. I couldn't connect to it. I couldn't like picture anything. And maybe that's the audiobook's fault. It might have just been a me thing. I'm not really sure. But by the end and by the plot twist that everyone hyped up for me, that just left me really disappointed. It undid everything that we had went through in this book and all the progress the characters had made. And I don't know, it just felt like lazy writing to me, and it really bugged me. So I gave this 2 stars. 2 because I actually did really enjoy the first little bit of the book, but then as we got into it, I just didn't. So I don't really recommend that one. I'm not going to read book 2 unless everybody says it's crazy, but probably not. I shouldn't have trusted them the first time. And then after that, I did listen to another audiobook like back to back, which is impressive for me, but I read Bones by K.L. Spear. This was an indie published book, but the author is currently getting her book traditionally published. I think it comes out sometime this year, I'm not really sure. So I was excited to read this and see what I thought, but this is a kind of post-apocalyptic dystopian romance book, and I really liked it. I really liked the characters in this. We had a really good found family element. The only thing, I just wish we had some more world building. I really wish we got a great sense of where they are in this world. It's supposed to be post-apocalyptic, so I wish we got more of those elements and more of the dystopian, but the main character Bones has kind of been abused her whole life. She was working as a healer because she has magical powers that can heal people. She was working for this group of people in the desert, but then she split ways with them and was picked up by this group of young guys who take her to their community, this compound in the mountains, where she has her clinic, and so she is healing people in this community and growing with them, but she has a lot of trauma. So she's very complicated and, I won't lie, very unlikable character at first. There's so many decisions she made that really made me mad, but I understood it was part of her journey. The only thing, I will kind of say the same thing that I did with Metal Slinger. I feel like the ending of Bones undid all the progress the character had made for Bones' trauma, and you know, it just undid a lot of what had happened and the plot, and it really bothered me. It felt like a lazy way out. So I'm curious to read book 2 whenever that like re-releases, because I want to know the ending to Bones' story. I think she's a really interesting character, and I want to see these characters again that I've grown to love. And I also don't know if this book has been changed. So if you do decide to read this book, keep in mind that it was indie published and is now like gone through probably maybe more edits, maybe more developmental things. So I'm not really sure if things stand the same. I am curious to like reread it and see if there are any changes. But overall, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, and it was a really solid read. I do recommend it. It just kind of missed a lot of my expectations. And next up, we have my favorite book of the year so far, which is no surprise. Honestly, as you saw, I read the next 2 books in the Throne of Glass series, and then I ended up finishing with Kingdom of Ash in April. It was the only book I finished in April, so it really kind of put me in like a mini slump, I think. I think it was also because I read this at the same time as like school was finishing and I was graduating, so it was kind of just a lot at once, but 2 chapters came to a close, which is very satisfying. So without a doubt, I gave this 5 stars. It was a beautiful conclusion. I do think I wish more would have been explained. I wish we would have seen more of these characters parting ways. That is literally my like only critique. I just wanted more things to be given closure. Because this is their ending, you know, we don't get any more. And I'm just thinking of like Dorian specifically, and then Manon. I kind of wish we got more from them at the very end. But I understand it's also Aylin's story, so it's about her. She's the focus, and it came to a close. And I just could not put it down. I was just so invested with this. I loved every single second of it, and I will never forget this series. Oh, no words. Next up, I decided to read Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. This was my book club's pick for April, I believe. I did really enjoy this overall. I thought it was very cozy, a lot of fun, very reminiscent of Howl's Moving Castle. If you like that movie or any Studio Ghibli movie, I think you'll like this book. Our main character Agnes runs a cat shelter, but she is looking for a new place because these magicians were dueling on the street and her place was destroyed, so she needs a new home for her cats. Overall, this book was so much fun. Definitely got the cozy fantasy vibes going on. I think our characters were very sweet. I had some issues connecting to them. Perhaps it was because I read this across the entirety of April during the chaos of school ending, so that might be why. And that's totally just my fault. That's not any fault with this book. I just felt like we also needed a bit more plot, a bit more higher stakes. Like, of course it is a bit cozier, it's a bit more whimsical, you don't really need a lot of action, but the action that was there, it was really good. I liked the magic fight scenes we got, and you know, a lot of the character dynamics between Havelock and his sister Valerie. I think my favorite part of this though was the cats. They definitely carried this book for me. I like how they were written like as their own characters, as their own distinct personalities, rather than just like little things around. They were definitely like the biggest component of the book, and I really loved it. They were my favorite part, and I loved seeing Agnes like take care of them. It was just so cute and so fun. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I do recommend it. I just wish it hit a bit harder for me, but that's okay because I'm going to finish the Emily Wilde series, and hopefully I start to love those books a bit more as well. And then right after that book, I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is a romance book, and I'd heard a lot of really good things about this. My close friend Haley gave this book 5 stars, so this was a 5-star prediction for me as well. Unfortunately, I just gave it 4 stars, but I still really love this book. This is one I'm going to be thinking about for a really long time. I think I read it at the perfect time as well, because the main character Clementine is going through a lot of life changes. Her aunt passed away 6 months ago. She was really close to her, and she inherits her apartment. So she's living in New York City working as a publicist for this publishing house. So she feels like very stressed. There's a lot going on in her life. Her aunt had always told her though that the apartment was very magical, and little does she know that one day she comes back into her apartment and there's a man in there, but he's from 7 years in the past. So they are interacting, and I just thought their scenes were so cute, and seeing how they like kind of got to know each other through this random little hole in time that they could be together in, it was very sweet. And then I really liked how everything came together at the end. I won't really say too much because I didn't know like anything about this. That's the main premise I knew, was the magical apartment. I didn't know anything else, and it really just surprised me with how, first of all, well written it was, but how relatable it was. Like, I really related to Clementine and kind of just finding herself and figuring out what she wants to do in her life, and realizing that like you don't have to be tied down to just one thing. Like, it's okay to just like screw it all and just try other things. And yeah, this was just such a cute little romance book. I definitely recommend it for the summer. and I'm excited to read more from Ashley Poston because she has so many other romance books that now I'm really intrigued by. The next 2 books I read were also audiobooks, but they were the start to what is becoming one of my favorite series of all time. I started listening to The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower, and wow, I'm so hooked. So many people are loving this series right now, and for good reason. It is so well written, so much fun. I really love the blend between coming of age and historical fiction and a little bit of romance here and there. It's just so unique and so much fun, and I definitely recommend the audiobook because the narrator is amazing. She does so many voices for all the different characters. But if you don't know what the series is about, it follows the main character, Emma M. Lyon, who her parents have passed away. She's moved back to London to live with her cousin Archibald, who sucks. He sucks. But she is living in her childhood home, which is also her inheritance. It's called Lapis Lazuli House. And along the way, she meets all these different people. Her housemaid Agnes, of course, cousin Archibald. They take on a tenant in their house whose name is Niall Pierce. She's meeting with the Duke of Islington and all her little friends in London. And it's just so much fun to see her adventures. And it's basically like you're reading her journal. So you get all of her thoughts, you get all her weird, wacky descriptions of everything. She's very witty, very fun to read about and be in her head. So I've listened to volume 1 and volume 2, and I'm actually currently in the middle of volume 3, so I'm so excited to continue with this series. I gave both volumes 1 and 2 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm just loving it. I highly recommend, if you have not read this series at all, or if you haven't even heard of it, go seek it out. It is so much fun. Perfect spring and summertime reads. And we have come to the last book of this list. This is number 22. This is the final book that I've read so far this year. I'm still in the middle of a couple books right now, so you will hopefully get another wrap up for me soon, maybe at the beginning of fall. Maybe I'll do like a summer wrap up or something like that. But the last book that I finished is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and what's funny enough, this is actually my March book club pick for my Fable book club, but it took me so long to get through it. Not because I didn't like it, I did really enjoy it. I gave it 3.75 stars, which is kind of like a random rating for me. Normally I don't really do 0.75, 0.25, I just try and do half or whole stars, but I feel like this book was very tricky. I had a weird experience with this book. I read it for a very long time, for about 2 months or so, but I think that's what I needed to like really enjoy this story, because I had a lot of issues connecting with our character Addie, and then also Henry after we met him. I really liked them and how they were written. I just felt like I couldn't really get into it, mainly because we were jumping time so much that I would read a chapter and then read another chapter and then I'd stop because I got busy, and then I could pick it back up and I was like, wait a minute, where were we? And that's definitely my fault. Like, that's not this book's fault. But I don't know, I just had some issues kind of like getting really to know them. But this was my first like adult V.E. Schwab book, and I love her writing so much. I'm so excited to pick up her other series because I feel like she is such a great writer. I can't believe I haven't read more from her, to be honest, but I really enjoyed her writing and I highly recommend this book for that reason. I just also think it couldn't really hold my attention. Like, it's not that nothing happened, so much actually happened in this book. We go throughout centuries of time, but I feel like things didn't really grasp me until halfway through. So I was reading the first half, and then after we met Henry, I was way more intrigued after we met Henry, and after him and Addie started, you know, doing things together and trying to figure their curses out. And then we got to the end and I was just so hooked with the stuff with Luke and figuring everything out and how it all came to an end. It was just so satisfying and just such a beautiful story. I don't know, it just wasn't there for me, probably because I read it for 2 months, and again, that's my own fault. But I don't know, I can see why so many people love this book though, because this is truly one of a kind. Like, I cannot think of a single other book that has made me think of this book. It is so unique, and I definitely recommend it. If there's any book on this list, maybe besides like Throne of Glass or something, that you read, this will be it. There's nothing like it. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to pick up this stack to show you all the books that I've read so far this year. There's absolutely no way that's happening. But if you've read any of these, please let me know your thoughts. I would love to know your reading or how you felt about any of these. Leave them down below in the comments if you'd like. And I'm excited to keep reading later this year and do another wrap up for you. I still don't know if we'll do monthly wrap ups. That just feels like kind of a lot, especially because I feel like reading is hit or miss for me. Like, I'll either read like 10 books or 2. So I don't want to be like inconsistent with that. So I think I'll move forward with this like big wrap up concept. If you like that, let me know. But thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed me taking you through my brief little thoughts and feelings about these books. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!